Welcome and thank you very much for joining Founders Fusion. We just met. We're both based here in Singapore. We prepared a couple of questions, but audience, I really like to invite you to also ask your questions to YC. Before I go into a lot of more generic questions, your team gave me 2 slides that I will flip up on the screen. But can you first introduce yourself and Glints to everybody who is not aware of what you guys are doing yet?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So I think quick intro about myself. Started Glints about, I think 7-8 years now. I actually 7 to 8 years ago we were sort of infamous in Singapore because I went to school for 1 semester and I dropped out to start Glints. Very long journey, a lot of ups and downs along the way, but we came through a lot of difficulties. So what Glints is, we are a full stack career development platform targeting in Southeast Asia young white collar professionals. Right, so that's on the candidate side. On the employer side, we help them build teams. So one of the offerings I'm going to talk about is like Talent Hub. So we help companies to build teams offshore.
Yeah. Okay. You want to do that in line with this slide?
Yeah, sure. If not, my team will get me in trouble. Yeah. So basically, if you guys are hiring or building out engineering teams, that's what we can help with. So we mostly specialize in Southeast Asian talent. We have teams in Indonesia, Vietnam, and Taiwan now. So you can talk to any one of us. We can help you to figure out if we are hiring a single engineer or building our entire teams. So those are things that we help out with.
Yeah. And I can warmly recommend hiring through Glints. Darvis, who some of you might have met here in the session, we hired him through Glints. And he's been building an extensive part of the Startup Buddy platform. So, you guys just raised a lot of funding, Series C round. You already said that your journey has been quite long, but that's been quite difficult at the start as well. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that? Because you already started immediately by saying, "Oh, I dropped out of school, and now you're raising one of the biggest rounds this year so far in Singapore." Can you share a little bit how that went?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for sure. So I think I can go all the way back. We started in 2013. And back then it was just a very simple spreadsheet. Basically, I got started because I was just interning around in the startup scene, and a couple of friends, they were quite interested, and they asked me, "Hey, could you link me up with other startups that are hiring interns in Singapore?" So we did that. We started off with a spreadsheet, and basically we were just doing it all manually. And that was before we went to school. So we started this thing with the expectation that, it's just a project. If you go to school, we will do the real thing, right? And we were all, like me and my co-founders, we were all in scholarships back then. So it was out of question that we would do anything else other than the scholarships. But we then joined this incubator called JFDI. It's since closed down, but it was very instructive because it showed us that we could, there's this thing called a venture capital. You can raise funds, you can find PMF, product market fit, and we went through that, not knowing exactly what the future is going to be like. So one thing led to the other. We raised a seed round, dropped out of school. Of course, there are multiple times where we almost ran out of money along the way. But then I think about 2-3 years ago, we managed to try enough things that some things clicked, and the sales started to climb up steadily over time. And we was able to attract better talent along the way. And so this snowball in the past few years that eventually culminated in Series C, which is just a milestone for us. We don't see it as somewhat of a success. It's more like a funding event. So that was a very high level, the whole journey. Even now, like we just the day we closed Series C round, right? It's quite funny. Like a lot of people congratulated me, but I couldn't be more stressed because the expectations are higher than ever. I need to build out a team faster than ever.
Yeah.
So it was just this contrast where everyone was congratulating me, but inside I was stressed to the max. So yeah.
And not to mention that the investors are going to be demanding too.
Yeah. With great funding comes great expectations.
Exactly. You already mentioned that it kind of started with sort of a school project, and that's how you got together as co-founders.
Yeah.
You've now been working for a long time together. Founders Fusion, the event that we're doing today, a lot of people are actually joining to find co-founders. Now, not everybody is so lucky like you that they happen to be in school and find their co-founders.
Yeah.
But do you have 2 or 3 points that you think, hey, this is why it worked for us, other than happening to be in the same school?
Yeah. So one thing I learned along the way. So let me just give you a bit of background. We started with three co-founders, and all three of us went to school together. But me and Oswald, we knew each other since high school, so we knew each other for 10 years. Along the way, it wasn't all smooth and dandy. I think about 4 years in, one of our co-founders left us. So there was quite a journey, because a lot, as you can imagine, super uncomfortable discussion. And one learning I had from that is that if you have some fundamental disagreements right from the beginning, in terms of working style, in terms of vision of the company, you got to address that right from the start. Because for us, we didn't do that. It lasted over 3 to 4 years. And when it came to that point where we realized it's not workable, things became very difficult to work through, right? So you have things like shares, you have things like the board, you have things like teams that are hired. You got to sort through all of that. So that's one thing. The other bit is, I would say, date before you get married, because having a co-founder is like getting into a marriage. In fact, it's a lot more intense than that, because if you think about it, it's actually spend 9-10 hours per day with your co-founder. So for us, we actually tried a couple of projects before that. I was lucky with also, we actually participated in like 2 or 3 business plan competitions. I knew that he was a person I could work with. We could iron things out. And then it leads me to a third point, which is eventually I think what worked out for people that eventually join us and stay with us for a long time is that we make sure that we hire people with low egos. We realize that that's something that that eventually caused a lot of people to have issues in different directions. So having a low ego allows you to solve for a lot of these other things. So that was the number one criteria we look for. Yeah.
That's actually, I might be adding to that to my recruitment list too. So, okay, very interesting. You also already mentioned that you went to JFDI. I heard rumors it might be coming back in Singapore.
Oh.
I'm not sure. I'm not involved. But basically, they teach you how to build a company, right? And it's like a very high pressure program, and you get a lot of mentoring. Are there 1 or 2 people that in the past years mentored you yourself or the team a lot that were really important? And how did you find those people?
Yeah. In fact, I think mentors play a pretty disproportionate part in our journey. Majorly because we are just so fresh. I mean, this is not just our first company; it's our first job for me and Oswald. So we are completely, unschooled in the way that businesses work. We have to figure a lot of things out ourselves. So one mentor that really helped us out was our board members, like our current board. They were all mentors beforehand. Ping, for example, from Mount Hill. And the way we found them was actually just through sessions like this, right? Maybe sometimes we attend a talk by them. We realize, okay, this is a guy who has experience that we want to learn from. We don't just go up to them and say, hey, can you, mentor us? What we do is we typically just start off with a very specific question that we need help with, an operational issue that shows that we are deep in the trenches. We are not just asking in the abstract. They will give us a pretty specific advice, and what we do then is we go back and implement it. And then a couple of months later, we're updating. Okay, hey, this is what I did. This is what I learned. This whether it worked or not. And then some of them, when they see that you are, following up and keeping them updated about the progress, they will then follow up, see give you more mentorship and more coaching. I think generally it's just very rare to see people follow up with advice they give.
Yeah.
So once you do that, you immediately stand out among other people who ask for advice. Yeah. That's how we got. Yeah. Eventually, they all became investors. So that's a progression over there.
I think that's a super good tip. It's but in general, it's hard to follow up properly. But I think this way you can also find out if that person actually understands what you're trying to do, and can actually help you along the way. So.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I've been going through your LinkedIn, of course, because that's what I do when I prepare. And I saw that you're nowadays also have some investor experience at a company called Alkriti, if I'm correct.
All right.
How did that come about?
Yeah, that was actually in the earlier days when I was starting Glints. And that was in the days where we were still exploring. We were still quite unfocused. We didn't know whether Glints was meant to be the thing. So, we just want to try all things startup. And one of our angel investors for Glints, he happened to be running this little angel fund. So we just helped him with, evaluating some of the deals. Eventually, I quickly dropped out of that because, when you're running a startup, it's your sole focus. It just takes up all your time.
Yeah.
So that was just a very early, business fling that I had. It was like I think at least 6 years ago.
So I'm aware that since you're CTO, I'm not sure how much you were involved in the fundraising or not, because usually the CFO or the CEO is doing that. But since you have had like a quick outside stint in VC, and now you guys raised funding as well, is there something that you learned from that you can tell the founders and entrepreneurs that are joining here today that might help them if they need to fundraise?
Yeah, definitely. So one misconception I had in the beginning as an engineer and CTO is I always thought the best product, the best tech, or even the best business will raise funding. I was quickly hit with the hard truth. I realized that fundraising itself is a skill, and it is a process, and it is a grind at times, right? But it's a numbers game, right? And that's one of the things I learned following Oslo. So I wasn't driving the process, but I was involved in certain key parts like presenting the tech, demoing the product, explaining the product vision. So I realized a lot of it, and it varies from stage to stage. So you got to understand at every stage what are the investors looking for, and they are not necessarily looking just for the best product or tech. And that's what I thought naively at first. There's a lot of other factors that goes into what they evaluate for, and for sometimes it's just that they are looking for a certain thesis, right? There's a certain investment thesis. I mean, you just don't fit into that. It doesn't mean that you are a bad company or you're a bad founder, right? So that took me a while to understand after talking to multiple investors to get it off. Yeah.
I think that's a super good tip. I always try to explain people if you're building your company, you're selling your product and it needs to be good. But if you're trying to raise funding, you're selling the whole company.
Exactly. The company is the product.
The company is the product, and that's much wider than do we have the best code or the best UI or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So true.
By the way, if anybody has questions, there should be a questions button on the right side of your screen. Please put your questions in there, because I'm not so multifunctional that I can keep track of all kinds of different individual chats. So now that you're quite some time forward in building Glints, and you have built teams now in other countries as well, what's been the most fun thing that pops up in your brain when I ask this question that you've been doing over the years? In general, I hope you still like being a founder of this company, but what are like one or two anecdotes that makes this your dream job?
Yeah, it's very hard to say, because at the start of the highs are very high and the lows are extremely low. And I would say 98% of the time it's a grind, and at 2% it's a high. So one of the highs that came to me recently was when we did so right now we are for context, we're about 300 to 400 employees. And personally, I'm leading a team that's about 20 to 30. And it's been a very arduous journey for me to scale to become manager of such a big team. And to be honest, I'm still learning. So for the past 2 or 3 years, there's always been issues coming up, like, employees asking for raises. Yeah, I say, at the start, there's no career progression. And these are things that I never envisioned myself getting into, right? Starting a startup. I want to create as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So recently, when I did a focus group discussion, of course, there are the usual frustrations that we are always trying to solve. But then when we asked them about, why do you enjoy working at Glints, a lot of them mentioned about the mission, right? About the ownership, about how, when you work at Glints, you feel like you own part of the future, right? Yeah. Whereas working at a big corp, you're sort of just a cog in the machine.
Yeah.
So being able to sort of provide that kind of working environment for team members, as far afield as, say, Vietnam and Taiwan, and seeing the genuine motivation they had as part of the team, I think that's one of the best feelings. If you guys actually get to the experience of running a big team and you see everyone coming to work every day, aligned on the same mission, excited about the same mission, that is one of the best feelings, because you sort of rub that initial spark and that you slowly gather into the snowball.
Yeah.
That is very fulfilling to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing to add. So, I'm really sorry. Time is flying by really quickly. So I'm gonna get to the last question for today.
Sure.
Actually, Desmond from your team asked me to present 2 other things, so I'll pop those up on the slide first. So while I do that, do you have 1 or 2 more tips for all the founders and entrepreneurs and startup people that are here on the call, that you wish that you had known, well, let's say in 2013 or a little bit later, but that would have immensely helped you to make it easier, quicker, better, whatever, and that you had to learn later on?
Great question. Yeah. I think one thing I would say is...
I always save the difficult one for that.
Yeah, that's the tough one. That's right. Yeah. One thing I would say is it's going to take a lot longer. It's going to be a lot harder than you think. And it doesn't get any easier even as you scale, right? It's just always going to be a learning journey. It's always going to be a battle. One mantra that I have, that I constantly remind myself along the way, is that winning is gritty, right? So when I first started Glints, I had this very clean idea of the future, which is, we'll find product market fit, everything will click, and then it will just keep growing, and then eventually reach a certain point, we start a company, we all retire rich. Turns out reality is much more messy than that. I'm not saying that can't happen to you, but it is going to be a grind for 4 or 5 years, right? Make sure that you pick an idea that you're passionate about. You pick people that you're passionate about. You pick an industry you're passionate about. Something that you're willing to sacrifice, 10 hours per day for the next 5 to 6 years of my life. Like for me, I thought it was going to be a 3-4 year journey, ended up to be a 7 to 8 year journey, and it's ongoing, right? It's an infinite game, right? So what I was just want to say is be mentally prepared for this journey. So I don't want to scare anyone off, but it can be really tough at times, and the challenges just get bigger and bigger at every stage. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like probably in the past couple of years I've had like 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 20 times this kind of epiphany moment that I thought this is the final solution.
Yeah.
But then again, it wasn't.
No, yeah.
So like you're saying, it's a long journey, but I think if you look back, you always realize how much you already achieved.
Yeah, I mean, I've grown beyond what I imagined in many different ways. Yeah, so I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
I really want to thank you, YC. I know it's always going much faster than I anticipated, but I think you shared a lot of knowledge and experience that is very valuable for everybody who is joining Founders Fusion today. Mm-hmm. For everyone, I also want to mention the Startup Buddy and Glints have partnered up. If you now are hiring new people for your team with Glints, the first month of what is it? The subscription fee. You probably know better than me. It's being waived. Trust me, that's very attractive. And I can honestly say that the people you will be hiring through Glints are really, really good. So have a look at their website and let us know if you want to leverage on that partnership. Thanks a lot, YC, and I hope very, very much that we can meet, I don't know, maybe July or something, sometime after June 14th.
Yes. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you very much.